All right, welcome to a new edition of News Talk with Brandon and Bob. I am Brandon Jones, host of Pops on Pop Culture and What's Your Story? And with me, as always, the Worm and Germ Guy.
Worm and Germ.
Worm and Germ, both. He's the expert on both. Outbreak News Today host, Robert Harriman. How are you doing, Bob?
Brother, doing well.
Another week?
More chaos.
It is As the World Burns, if there was a subtitle for this show, because it is just insane, huh?
Yeah, and it's just being allowed to burn, too.
I know. So let me jump right to that, because that really is our first topic, is to talk about that a little bit. And this was actually a couple of days ago. It wasn't this crazy when this quote came out. Shaun King, you know who Shaun King is?
I do.
All right. Black Lives Matter activist. We will have a photo there for you folks. You can see that in the thumbnail if you want to just watch the clip. So let me start with that. He has this great quote that he dropped on Twitter. He says, "Stop generically telling us to vote in response to all the police brutality we have right now. Yes, we should vote, but we have to be very specific. Democrats, from top to bottom, are running the cities with the worst police brutality in America right now. We voted for them." Tough words.
Actually, I was really shocked when I heard this.
Yeah,
it's like,
let's see it.
This came out of Shaun King's mouth, but he's spot on.
Yeah, I think it's got to be a little bit of the speaking to the ignorant crowd. Like, you guys are in there going, we need to change, we need to vote, we need to change people. And he's like, well, all these people in charge are actual Democrats. So you're really going to be shocked when you're trying to figure out who you're supposed to vote for.
And we've seen it time after time after time. And the fact that Shaun King was able to see that also does leave me in shock.
Yeah, I went to Minnesota politics because Yahoo had a good report by George Corda. He's actually with the Knoxville News, one of the USA Today affiliates. And he says, below are some pertinent questions given the way the Democratic Party defines itself as being a party of tolerance and inclusion, and many Democrats' characterizations of Republicans or conservatives as racist or racially insensitive. Minneapolis, Minnesota has been under Democratic control since 1978. Chicago has been under Democratic control for 89 years. Its present mayor is a black woman. Philadelphia has had Democratic mayors for 68 years. 3 of the last 5 have been black men. 6 of the last 7 Atlanta, Georgia mayoral administrations were led by black Democratic mayors, and the present mayor is a black woman. Why aren't these cities garden spots of racial tolerance, understanding, and virtue?
Yeah, and one city that was really left off that list, probably the most recent big city that we saw burn, was Baltimore. Mm-hmm. And even back then, we saw it from the top. Mayor, police chief, every single layer was African American.
Yeah, and Freddie Gray, of course, was the big sort of like hoopla that rallied protests and those kinds of things, racial inequality, police brutality. We covered the Freddie Gray story pretty regularly, and I think most of the officers are minority, if not all of them.
Oh yeah,
yeah,
it's predominant. Yeah. So the question is, why?
Well, we already have some gasoline. Let's just pour it right on this fire.
Okay.
So let's go to Baltimore. This is from Chris Cuomo. You know, he's a hardcore righty, right?
Sure is.
He is, right? He's right of Ilhan Omar? Maybe?
I would say so. She's pretty far
I think
left.
Chris Cuomo's right of AOC. And probably right of Bernie.
Yeah.
Okay,
yeah,
so
fair.
The right-wing Chris Cuomo had this to say about Baltimore during an interview with the black Baltimore City Councilman Nick Mosby. He says, quote, this is Cuomo, "Is this on you guys? The mayor is Democrat, you're a Democrat, 50 years of Democratic rule. This is an idea that you haven't gotten done as a party, as a structure. Let's focus on the blame." Mosby, "Leadership is not based off party lines." Let's just make some t-shirts right there.
There you go.
All right. At the very end of the day, have individuals failed in the city, in this state, in this country? Yes. Have there been failed policies? Yes. Have things adversely affected places like Baltimore? Yes. Yes. Well, whether you're talking about Reaganomics, whether you're talking about contraband, where they talk about stop and frisk procedures and mass incarceration, all of these things directly play into the recidivism and play into the things that plague these communities. They know that they're in on the problem as well, but nothing ever changes.
Yeah, and again, the question is why. I don't know why, other than the fact that they are very lenient on a lot of things.
Yeah, I mean, I think at some point you end up in like a vicious cycle, right? So you can say, you know, it's about race, but reality is it's about crime. right? So
Yeah.
let's start with who's committing crime. Forget about race for a minute, because we're always trying to back engineer statistics for political expediency. But reality is, let's just focus on that, and then where some of the core problems are. So for me, I would say, in my personal opinion, a lot of the core problems just stem with the family, right? So once the family disintegration started in the 60s, it exponentially increased during the 70s. You start to see more split black families, more men that are growing up without fathers. The statistics speak for themselves. That a fatherless home is devastating on a man without regard to race, but especially in a black family, especially in a black family in a major metropolitan area. The jobs are very limited for a black woman that's single, that may be uneducated or have limited resources of what she can do, a child at home. You end up on just like a snowball effect in these inner cities, and I don't know what you do to fix that.
No, I'm 100% with you on that. The only problem is there's a lot of people in the African American community that don't want to discuss that aspect of it.
Sure.
They want to point fingers elsewhere, but there are people that are. Larry Elder and the people like that saying, listen, this is the core.
Yeah, and
this is the core, right?
There's Blexit. We talked about Blexit before. We've talked about Brandon Tatum. I think last week we talked about George Floyd and some of his theories. He's a co-founder of Blexit, and that there's a big movement in many in the black community. They've moved away from that sort of leftist ideology. They kind of feel like they're left without a home, because I'm not sure that they feel like the Republican GOP really are hearing them either. But when we come from a place where, for us, some of our iconic heroes are Walt Williams, Thomas Sowell, right? Who joke, by the way, if he and Walt were on the same plane together, the entire movement could have gone down at any time. So they shouldn't buy a plane together. So for many years,
It's true.
they are these two iconic black conservative libertarian economists who were discussing not only just pure economics, but also social issues, trying to debunk things like white privilege and racism and affirmative action. So using their statistics. These are black men doing these things. Professors at George Mason, they're incredibly renowned. Now we've seen that grow. You mentioned Elder. There's been others. Even this newer crowd. I'm not going to dismiss Candace Owen and Brandon Tatum just because they're young. I don't know a ton about all of the things that they say and do, but I will say they're at least speaking to different folks that were being spoke to before.
Yeah, and it's a great thing. However, what do they get in response? Uncle Tom.
Yeah, thrown out of the thing.
Yeah. It never fails.
Yeah, Kanye West was the biggest story, and my family and I had a conversation about Kanye West. I was actually invited to come to a church, and we spent some time discussing socioeconomic issues, racism in the church, having welcome open arms to everyone, which I felt is right in my wheelhouse. Like, you and I have talked about this personally. This is me, the pastor. Like, I don't care about denomination, I don't care about how old you are, I don't care what you wear. And the pastor stopped the whole thing just to address the Kanye West example that I had given, because he's got the wrong hat on, man. He's got the red hat. So if you have the red hat on, man, you're not part of the club. And it was very telling of sort of like an underlying theme and bias, even in the churches. I mean, it's kind of sad, but that's kind of the case too, or some certain environment. We saw this over the weekend, right? We saw George Floyd's funeral. Al's up there, pounding the drum, man. Got to cash in. Got to pound the drum.
Yeah, this is his moment.
Yeah.
Again, in the sun.
So I came home, I saw my wife today. I had a very powerful moment today where I was spending my own time in devotion and prayer, and I had to lay it on my heart, when's the last time the Christians have prayed for Derek Chauvin? When have we prayed for George Floyd's family? When have we prayed, so it's always easy to pray for one another and pray for people that we like, but we should be praying also for the enemies, these people that may be filled with hate or evil, or need healing and just need Jesus. And reality is, you got black families that are suffering, black individuals that feel pushed down, and there are bad cops. There are always going to be bad cops, but you know what? There's not always racists that's behind that. They're just, some of them are just honestly great cops. They burned out, right?
Yeah. No, I'm with you on that too.
So as things have progressed, we know now we've got the situation with Minnesota itself. They're talking about outright disbanding the police, which the city council just went ahead and voted on that. Like, yeah, we'll do that. The lady went on CNN, I believe. Yeah, that's right. Camerata. Is that the host's name, I believe, for there?
I guess.
Yeah.
But, yeah.
And basically just said, yeah, we're good with that. And she said, well, what if someone's breaking into my house? What if a crime is being committed and I need to call the police? And she's like, well, I understand how you feel that way, but we're coming at it from a place of white privilege. And the world has kind of put her name out there too.
Yeah.
And it's like, I don't understand the world that we're trying. Maybe that's it. It's that they're burning one world down, but they're not offering us a picture of what world they want to create. Is that kind of how you see it too?
Well, like everything else that they do, they take it to the umpteenth degree, and it's going to end up devouring them like every other policy that they take too far. I mean, what's going to happen to these cities without police? And what does defund police mean? What is that? What's the actual definition of that?
Yeah,
I don't know.
I've read a couple different things there. I know, a lot of the reform, refund, just all sorts of different things. And you hear sort of mixed messaging. Spike Lee spoke on this recently. He has no power or authority to have anything with policy writing, but he was talking about it in sort of fictitious ways, where it was just more like, well, we're just going to have nice cops, basically. If I had to sum up some of their things, it's like, well, the money isn't really just about how many officers you have; it's about all this other stuff. And AOC came out, I think yesterday, talking about because we spent money on a tank. Okay, well, you and I all agree with that. Why are we buying the local sheriff's office tanks and expensive drone technology and things like that? However, when it comes to on the ground crime fighting, talking about mental illness and counseling and all that isn't going to help when someone's busting in to rob someone's house, or a domestic violence call, or a murder-suicide case. So I don't know what the solutions that they're proposing.
Well, exactly. I mean, so you're going to have a woman in their house being raped, and you're going to call the social workers? I mean, what do they really expect? I have a lot of issues with the police. There's reasons to. However, they still are a necessity. Now, if they wanted to fund it, and I would argue this: if you came to me and said, Bob, we need to fund police, I'd be okay. Let's make the police private. Oh no, we can't do that.
Yeah. What are you going to do in its place, right? So we're saying we're going to burn one system down, but we have a lack of clarity on what the new system will be. So when Shaun King comes out and says, look, Democrats, be careful what you're asking for because you're saying vote all these people out, I think what he's also saying is, well, we may want change, but it's not necessarily the letters after their name that needs to change. It's kind of where some of these things have been done. And I do think there's probably some truth in the black community where they feel very taken advantage of by the Democratic Party, and they just have disregarded the GOP. And this is where the socialist movement has really engaged a lot of the folks on the left with AOCs and Ilhan Omar's. Whereas on the right, we're just sitting there going, well, we want facts, we want solutions, and they just kind of they're not even hearing us calling for those things.
So where do you think this is going in the big picture? Is this helping out Trump?
Oh, I think it's way too early to tell.
Yeah.
I would say if the election was probably in August, I would say a strong maybe. But again, still 52-48 kind of thing, right? We're talking about a very split country. It's still about turnout. I will say that cities can be burning. We're seeing Seattle and Baltimore, Minneapolis, Chicago, New York, these massive cities, and all this outrage and protest, massive numbers. California, of course. But then you're also seeing smaller cities, either come in closer, focus on the police departments, or they have great police chiefs who are like, no, we're not doing that. So middle to small cities have done that. You even see San Jose is a big high-profile one. I was shocked at how they've handled things. Then I think you have a large faction of America who are still, to be honest, it's not affecting me. I got to go to work. I got to take it with my kid. Where's daycare, summer camp? What's going on with COVID? What about my job? Do I have a job? How's my business? There's a lot of things going on where people are like, there's so many different factors happening. That's why I say it's way too early to predict all that.
Yeah. I really think they should look at reform. That's totally acceptable thought and policy, and get away from these Looney Tune ideas, because it's going to be very devastating.
What are some of the reform ideas that you've heard that you like?
I haven't.
You haven't?
No.
Okay, so one I think of, a couple I like. One I like was there are some immunity clauses that the unions have put in place for certain police departments. And some of them are not worded properly. So loosening those up, not necessarily wiping them out completely, but loosening them up so we can go after officers that have done something really egregious that would basically, kind of like the assault and battery thing. And a lot of them are getting off or getting lesser sentences because of those immunity clauses. Again, politicians are awful at wording bills. You and I talk about this our entire lives together. But I think that can be something that can be talked about.
What about police unions? I mean,
we're not going to have control over whether or not a city's going to have a police union.
Right.
They're going to push back exactly on what I just said.
But again, this is very important, right? We look at states, remember, the United States, the states created the United States, and even the lower levels of government, cities, they should be considered as laboratories for innovation. And if Minneapolis wants to do this, we can sit back and watch.
No, I think we're seeing that.
Yeah, and we can sit back and say, oh, that's not working the way they're saying it's going to. Minneapolis is in a county, I think it's Hennepin County, Minnesota. What's going to happen to that sheriff department? Are they going to have to cover the city also? Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of things that people aren't looking at.
Yeah. I do want to tease something will come up later, we'll probably get to it, is that a lot of people are using Camden, New Jersey as some sort of model. And I'd be able to do an analysis of that and what Camden, New Jersey actually turned into after they kind of adopted a reform. So stay tuned for that clip. We'll get to that later on in the show. But I don't know if other reform, I don't know what they mean. Like, I think there's a lot of things, people are talking about banning chokehold, banning an actual maneuver. I don't know if that's appropriate or not.
I'm not necessarily opposed to that.
Right, I do think there probably should be, I don't even know who should pay for this, but I would definitely think there should be some money. We talked about it last week, the excited delirium thing. There is something going on there, people that are hopped up on a drug, hopped up on an illicit material of some kind. They get this incredible strength, and then when they're crashing on that, heart rates are dropping, blood pressures are dropping. If they're heavy, obese, have a heart disease problem, so many people are at risk of having serious injury. So, there are topics, but again, I have such little faith that people know how to write a bill, write change, and write form. I just don't have faith in that.
By the way, where are the police in Seattle?
Seattle. Wow, that's a topic. We could run a whole segment just on Chaz.
Yeah.
That's our biggest story right now is Chaz. I was pretty early on adopting the detailed analysis of the demands they put on medium.com of these are our 30 demands, and it was basically the abolition of, completely removed, forget about, we're talking about reform, talking about defund, no. It says abolition of prisons, police, court. They want all of the criminals retried. They want records expunged. They want free housing. And it was like, Chaz is being allowed to exist as a state within the state. I don't even understand how this happened.
Yeah, I mean, doesn't it say at the front door of Chaz, you are leaving the United States?
Yeah.
But it's funny because I've talked about the kids that I work with in the past, and I introduced them to Chaz today. Nobody knew what I was talking about.
Yeah, somebody said that was our first comment on the story. Was like, we don't even talk about. I Googled it, can't find it. I'm like, it's on Medium.
So they looked it up, and they're like reading somebody's article about it, and it's like, oh, that's pretty cool. I can go up there and chill and have vegan food and do all that kind of stuff.
There's no vegan food.
I'm like, what are you talking about?
The homeless people stole the food. There's no food.
I know.
So I joked today because I had a couple people ask me about this story because it's getting kind of viral. Maybe we're on the front end of that or not. I don't know. But I said, when you watch Lost, they lasted for about 4 or 5 days before it started to drift into anarchy, right? You watch Walking Dead. You had a few weeks. It was all right. You did okay. Chaz lasted 2 days, and you got some rap guy who has an AK-47 over his back. He's implemented borders with stop and frisk and authoritarian measures, and he was, quote, on Twitter, said, I'll shoot your brains out.
Right.
So it took 2 days.
And they're complaining about the police.
It took 2 days to have a warlord rule. Not like the authoritarian because as far as I know, I don't know that I have faith that Trump knows how to use an AK-47, but as far as I know, he's not patrolling the streets with one, or wants to have that as the case. This is nuts.
Right, and again, going back to last week and talking now, where are the police? Where are they supposed to be? What about those businesses within Chaz?
I was told they were told to stand down. Everybody was told to stand down.
Exactly.
And they have looted and taken over the stores they didn't like, and some of the ones they do like are protected. That's what I was told. Now,
probably for a fee too.
I have not been able to fact check that.
Yeah.
I have not been able to fact check that.
But nonetheless, how is that even allowed to happen?
Well, I don't know if it's the mayor or I don't know how the politics work
even
there.
The governor said he was unaware.
They just stood down. He played ignorant.
Exactly.
Right, but they basically just stood down. So yeah, Chaz. So anyway, we've covered a lot. I know this segment's probably a little long. We'll have to maybe cut this in a couple pieces for you guys, but we have a lot of crazy stuff going on. We've got things beeping, so I guess it's our chance to take a break. So stay tuned. More news talk coming up.
Well, let's go to some because they did rile up a lot of emotions, and we've had a lot of violence. We had a waiter who, during the protests in Oakland, the protesters are attacking this restaurant. This was on day 3 of the protests. The restaurant had already endured violence and vandalism already, so he actually kind of got, kind of waving his arms, got out there in their face and said, listen, cut us a break. They smashed him in the face with a hammer. We had a jogger that was attacked, and of course in Baltimore, we had several black men who attacked a random Hispanic person in Baltimore, beating him, attacking him. It's just, for me, I'm struggling with the connection. I don't understand how the protesting, the violence, the vandalism, the set things on fire, breaking windows is remotely helping Trayvon Martin's family. Even if you completely despise George Zimmerman, you believe that he got off lucky and all of that, how is it setting something on fire, hitting a waiter in the face, and more importantly, to Al Sharpton, how is it getting these people arrested by riling them up and actually committing crimes is actually benefiting you? And for those of you that are supporting Al Sharpton, you have to kind of scratch your head and go, listen, he's getting people arrested because he's riled them up into these events. I mean, what else is there to say to that? It's just shocking.
Yeah, it's just like I said. It's just Al Sharpton has to remain relevant. I mean, the guy has a very shady past. Nobody seems to point it out. Interesting thing happened on television the other night, which I found quite ironic. And I am no, as you know, and many of the listeners know, I am no fan of Sean Hannity. But he had a gentleman from the NAACP on, and who was really blasting the Zimmerman trial. And Hannity asked him, well, during this trial, there were 61 black murders in Chicago during that period of time. Can you name one victim by name? It just couldn't happen. So
News Talk with Brandon and Bob. I'm going to totally shift gears because I don't know. I don't want to talk about the world burning this moment, so let me take a break from that. So you had brought the story to my attention, and I thought it was an interesting topic of discussion about where we kind of stand politically as individuals. I'm going to move my mic a little bit. So congratulations for the Libertarian Party. They have a candidate for president. You want to talk about her, what you know about her?
I actually didn't know a whole lot about her. Dr. Jo Jorgensen. She's a professor at Clemson, I think.
Okay.
And she was actually the vice presidential candidate for Harry Brown about 20 years ago. Mm-hmm. So she's been around the party for a long time. And she did win the nomination, surprisingly to me. I don't know if you know the other guy, Jacob Hornberger. I was a big fan of him. He ran an economic institution for some time. I actually interviewed him on my podcast.
Well, that's good.
But Jo Jorgensen won. And I think, and I'm dying to hear what you got to say. I think the time is ripe for a third party today.
And I think you're crazy.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I quoted an article. This is New York Mag. New York Mag agrees with me. They basically say that there's another factor that may strengthen the party unity when discouraging protest vote. Just about everyone expects a close election, so that's a negative, right? So everybody, they thought it was going to be Clinton in the bag, so there's a lot of third-party votes, stay-home votes. They were kind of immune to sort of like the surprise victory. However, because they want to play it safe against Trump, they don't expect that to swing that way. Trump generally trails nationally, and at least some of the most important swing states. He is favored in betting markets, however, so that may or may not have changed since this article was published a couple weeks ago. Because obviously. So, Democrats, burned by expectation 2016, likely will be guarded no matter what the polls say. So, first and foremost, will this person be able to figure out how to get in the debates?
Well, currently there are petitions going around. How much good that will do? Probably not much. But I think which is important though, because I think the Republican Democratic Party run debates specifically set up rules to prevent third parties. They prevented Ralph Nader. They prevented other bigger names.
They do not want to ever go through the Ross Perot thing again.
Right, exactly. So that's because I think it's 15%. That's the threshold you have to get into the debates now, which Ross Perot did achieve. However, I look out the window and I see circumstances that we're seeing a lot of civil rights being stomped on with COVID and all that. We're seeing this chaos going on right now, and people must be looking for a better answer than what's going on right now. We have a lot of liberty being squashed right in front of our eyes.
So, all right. So let me say this: if she doesn't make it in the debates, which they won't let her in the debates, I'm a big believer that if the third party person makes it in the debate, the whole landscape changes. If we go back to the Ross Perot, why there was success, it eliminates the I'm against what they said. Of course, now you have a third person, so you can't do that. It can't be a he said, she said, back and forth.
No, I'm well aware. Yeah.
So that's the key. The whole thing. They have to keep the third person out of the place.
And,
right?
and they will. They have.
They have to
for 20,
right.
30 years now.
Right. And there's no reason for me to believe they're going to get anywhere close to 15% in a poll, and because the polls won't even allow it, right? And there's a track record of them kind of leaning away from third party, especially when I was a big fan of this thing. I was more involved and a supporter of the Libertarian as a party. But I think just as much as the article says Democrats are leery, they're going to come out and vote for their person. We've seen it already. We've seen the way they've rallied around Biden no matter what, right? I think especially because of the civil rights stuff, because of the protests, because of cities burning, because of some of the stuff that's happened on the far left during Trump's administration, that we'll see more focus on voting for Trump and people that will be, well, I can't vote for those people. I think Tim Pool's show that he has a co-host there who's talked about how he's moved radically towards the right and will even vote for Trump just because the left has gotten so crazy. My family and I, we pretty much kind of had like a abstain vote in 2016. Said, well, we'll go the Constitutional Party guy. It's the closest to our ideology. We didn't know what to think about Trump. We didn't know what to expect. We didn't know who to put around him. We had mixed feelings in the first few weeks with positive policies getting done, but surrounded by crazy nutty people that were basically all been fired and gone. But I've also seen a lot of positive policies and things like that. So I can tell you that in my circle, we're pretty much locked in to vote for this guy, especially because the alternative of Biden and his cabinet are so crazy. I can't risk, even if I love Jo Jordan, she's going to have to knock my socks off. She's going to have to make a debate. She's going to have to say and do things that will get to that Ross Perot kind of thing. And I have to be honest, if that's the case, I will be absolutely change my mind. I've changed my mind to get this, because you and I were in different places in 2016.
Oh, absolutely.
Completely different.
So in 2016, just to let you guys know, on November 1st of 2016, I made the decision to vote for Donald Trump. And that was really based on two reasons. I found Hillary Clinton to be more of a warmonger, and Hillary Clinton wanted to kill children at any age.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and that ruled it out for me. However, being a libertarian for many, many years, I couldn't do what the Libertarian Party had out there, which was Gary Johnson and right, whose whole campaign was based on pot, basically.
Yeah, that's what he had done for several years.
Right, and he was also very pro-abortion, also, which it just doesn't work with me. And his vice presidential candidate, what was his name? Bill Weld, a big pro-war guy. So no, so I couldn't do them. And I was going to abstain. I don't know if you actually remember that. That was 4 years ago. But I turned to Trump out of fear of Hillary Clinton. So I imagine a lot of people are going to be feeling like you're describing, like fear in Biden in the left or fear in Trump in the right.
Well, again,
however,
but the difference is we see what Trump will actually do.
Yeah, and that is part of the problem for me too, is we can see that Trump has no fear of spending us into dramatic debt, which is a huge deal, and it's going to affect all of your children and grandchildren in a massive way. He's done it worse than Obama, than Bush.
No, but
which is important. I mean,
but I will say, look, again, we're back to the alternative, right? So now we are at the lesser of two evils in a lot of ways, and I think it's easy to say, well, he's going to spend more. He did.
A lot more.
If Hillary had won, it would have been even worse. And I will say that, in theory, again, if I feel like I can get a viable candidate, I was actually I was even more revolted by Gary Johnson than you were. And we actually interviewed Gary Johnson. We actually were very big advocates of Gary Johnson before.
And a very nice man.
But he turned on a dime and become like pro-pot, pro-abortion. And what was in the bizarre move he used politically about being Bernie Sanders supporter? He decided, I'm going to reach out to the far left people to have someone to vote for. And I don't know how Joe Jorgensen's strategy will be. Like, how do you get voters? So let me ask you that. If you had to say you were her campaign, you were in a circle, you have her ear, what are a couple strategies that you would say, this is the best way you're going to appeal to someone on the right, and how are you going to appeal to someone on the left?
Well, I think she, unlike Gary Johnson, she needs to stick to her libertarian principles, period. And people are going to hear that and say that's real, right? Gary Johnson in 2012 was kind of bumbling, for lack of a better term. So you would have thought he would have read some books and magazines over the next 4 years, and he was even more bumbling in 2016.
He got high and worked for a pot company.
Yeah, he didn't learn anything, and
it wouldn't be a news talk show if we didn't have rain and thunder, because every single week we have rain and thunder. Welcome to Florida, folks.
He didn't learn anything, and it's kind of a shame because he was a reasonably effective governor in a Democratic state.
Yeah.
So, and a very nice guy. We did get a chance to meet him. I think Joe has a very long track record, and I think things like podcasts are going to give her some boost because there are a lot of people out there that are liking it in the podcasting world.
No, I mean, look, she has a great opportunity. There's a ton of people. If she ends up on a show like Rogan, she starts doing a Dave Rubin sit down. She starts getting a few heads turned. I think it's absolutely a possibility. But again, like I said, and maybe that's true. I also don't know a lot yet, so I will say that. But I will stand that I find it hard to believe that if Trump did anything, he cemented a stronger movement to his side than he had before, because the left are so crazy. They're not going to forget Brett Kavanaugh. They're not going to forget Ilhan Omar's anti-Semitic remarks. They're not going to forget these people. They're not going to.
No,
I referenced a couple of the books that I had read on the Trump voters that were Obama voters before, and they all have these pivot issues. Everybody wants this purity test. That is not how most people operate. You whittled your purity test away and got down to two serious hinge points. Said, listen, I can't vote for Hillary because of this and because of that. And even though I know I may not be getting exactly what I want, it's better. I feel the same way now. I like Biden is off the table. He's literally it's actually tragic at this point. And then with Trump, I feel like he's not interested in policy. He's letting other people handle most of that. He's basically just running a reality show. He's just running a ratings machine. He's just running a headline machine. He wants to control the media attention no matter what he has to say or do. Policy-wise, though, other than the spending sprees, it's not been too bad. I don't understand why we have a spending spree. That's a different argument altogether, to hold the hog for a different show. But I don't, at this point, expect Republicans to be any different. They haven't. They disappointed me before. They had both houses of Congress when Trump came in office, got nothing done, couldn't get Obamacare done. So for me, though, I just have so little patience with the Libertarians because we see even more of a purity test. We see even more intolerance, not yourself, other Libertarians. And more of a Libertarian Party. Not you calling yourself Libertarian, but you voted for Republican last time. The hardcore, you have so many anarchists, you have the potheads, you have a lot of folks that have these very idealistic purity test things, and if you don't fall in line, man, you're out. They don't want to have anything to do with you.
Yeah, well, I would venture to say that you see that both with the Democrats and the Republicans, too.
I don't think it's as bad as it was.
Well,
I think Trump changed a lot of that. I think there's an anti-vote movement is stronger than it's ever been.
Part of the concern with Trump, though, is for those that follow him, he can do no wrong. Right?
I disagree. I think a lot of people are just like, ugh, they just hold their nose. I do think.
Watch Sean Hannity.
Yeah, but I think Hannity's like a golfing buddy. Hannity is not representative of the masses.
But that's representative of Hugh Hewitt. That's representative of Rush Limbaugh. They've all fallen into that.
But they don't have anybody with an R after them. They won't do that too. That's a little different. It's not a Trump thing though. It's just an R thing.
Well, it seems to have escalated though. I believe.
All right. Only because Trump does crazier things, and he says crazy.
I mean, they'll defend him no matter what.
Yeah, well, that's again. There's an R after the name, right? So
I mean,
you just don't get an I. You just don't get an
I mean, I
honest
understand you want,
commentary.
but if you're unable to criticize something that's wrong, even if it's a member on your team, that's a problem.
I totally agree.
Yeah,
I
that's
totally
a problem.
I'm not there. I'm
Yeah.
not there. I'm definitely, and I'm not even with Shapiro, but I'm more in that vein of the voter. Like I just like, he coined this good Trump, bad Trump place. That's where I'm at too.
Mm-hmm.
But again, I'm cost benefit, right? So huge negative on spending, but my alternative is a guy who will spend 16 times worse. Biden would be absolutely horribly worse.
No, I'm sure.
And Jorgensen, which is a question mark because I don't even know if it's a viable option or not.
Yeah.
And if she's not a viable option, she's off the table. The other is not an alternative, and one that's gotten so bad I can't risk it. When he says things like my climate policy will be involved by this person, I'm looking for a trans person, I'm looking for has to be a black woman VP.
Yeah.
How sexist and racist is these things? If we reverse that in any other class, we're burning cities down for that. So it's just an interesting conversation. I thought we'd throw some praise to Joe Jorgensen.
Yeah, I just want to say congratulations, and I'm going to get you on the podcast one of these days.
So,
All
right.
While we're on Trump, can we talk more about Trump?
How are we doing on time?
14 minutes.
14 minutes. You got 14 minutes.
Real
We'll transition to a Trump story. Let's go to Trump.
Well, real quick, there's some poll numbers that came out.
He moves his glasses, folks, so I have to move my mic because it's coming now.
Well,
When the glasses come down here, it's Bob.
there is a number of people, and this goes back to the time of kings and medieval times and all that,
Oh, boy.
where they found that people thought that the kings were anointed by God. Well, they did some polling, and
I got notes too.
yeah,
I got notes too. He's not getting over on me.
no, it's just a poll. This is the only notes I brought because I couldn't memorize it.
I have a note too.
I usually go noteless. Just 21% believed that the president of the United States, regardless of who it is anointed. Okay? But evangelicals were more likely to believe it, 29%, and Pentecostals were more likely, 53%. Then it says, in 2019, among white Protestants who attended church weekly or more often, about 30% believe Trump was anointed by God.
I'm checking boxes here is what you're basically pinning me in. I'm a checking box.
No, no.
Pentecostal, white guy, going to church regularly, pastor.
No.
It's
just these are the poll
I
numbers.
totally understand.
And my question is he anointed?
So, I will say from my experience, checking all those boxes, that in that circle of faith, it's better explained to say we believe that God has His hand and control in all things, and that Trump winning would be in line with this bigger picture plan. But I also think, again, we have free will, and we go down that rabbit hole. Anointing is a very tricky word for me because it involves different aspects of the Bible and Scripture. Like anointing for a prophet in a mission to go speak to God's people is different than saying, well, God's anointed one or something. It's used in different ways, and I don't know exactly. A survey like that is difficult because you don't know how the reader is interpreting the survey question. For me, God has not got United States in His forefront of His overall plan. The Jews are His chosen people. The timeline in the book that's written around is the Jewish timeline of their people. But He uses the covenant that America made. God used George Washington's covenant. We've seen a blessing on this country. We've seen amazing wealth, and we've used that wealth to do God's work in spreading the gospel, to do missionary work overseas. We've been the Christian community in particular, and the Jewish community have been huge in getting rid of poverty and feeding hungry people, helping in places of oppression like in China. So I'm not sure I would use the word like the presidents are anointed, because I do think there's something that they reflect their culture and their people. But God uses everybody. Like we have examples. I think that I saw Rick Perry's quote where he starts. First off, since when does he want to use imperfect people examples as King David and Solomon? God uses way more imperfect people than that. Xerxes is my favorite example. That's the one I usually preach from, because Xerxes is literally a human sacrificing pagan that's basically used to allow for the permission for the Jew to go back and build the temple again. So God can use all of circumstances. So if we even talk about that, it's a little trickier. But I will say that what Trump has done is he has heard the evangelical community. He's heard the church community.
Mm-hmm.
And they do, and I would say I agree. And again, I didn't vote for Trump because I was questioning this. But I feel like whether it's Mike Pence's influence, whether it's the pastors that are around him, I know Franklin Graham, for instance, has had close ties with him at times, that he's heard them on Planned Parenthood. You know, they're an organization that for some reason is corrupted by money, and they're killing babies, and they do little else. They pretend that they're not. He heard them on dealing with Iran, and that these are people that were stirring up massive trouble in the Middle East. They're persecuting, jailing Christians. We gave them millions of dollars on pallets under the Obama administration. He at least tried to wrangle some of that in without taking us to war. I think that he heard the Christian community enough that they feel, well, maybe that's God working. So that could be a contributor as well.
And that's my belief. That's my belief. I think Trump has been very good on select issues, and religious liberty has been one of them. Abortion's been a very good one. So that's where I thought it was coming from, because
Sure.
I am assuming that, I think that was from 2018, 2019, so it was post-election.
Mm-hmm.
So, but I guess my question for you was, did you think he was anointed?
I don't look at our president
Yeah.
as that way. I don't connect God's involvement
Mhm.
as personal as that.
Mhm.
I admit that I saw some good signs of Trump's faith earlier in his administration than I do now. The recent publicity stunt where he just waves a Bible around like he's never seen it before
Mhm.
is way different than he was when he first got elected. And there was some prayer moments, and there were some Bible references. Because when he was running for office, it was 2 Peter and 2 Corinthians. It was like, guy's never read a book, never really been in church. So he's not a churchy guy. But again, for me, anointed doesn't connect in that way. I look at it more of God uses, and I just pray that. I pray God to be done. See, the better example for me was the rabbi that I like. I've interviewed him. I enjoy his work. He wrote a book called Paradigm. His name is Jonathan Cahn. Have you heard of Jonathan Cahn? No. He has a newer book in Paradigm. He compared the 2016 to biblical references, Trump and as Ahab and Hillary as Jezebel. And there were different parallels with the Israeli story, the Jewish story, and different kind of, and their personality types, and how one was interested in, even though he may be more of a secular guy, not a godly person, he was still interested in doing right, trying to be good to the people. Whereas Jezebel was very corrupt to the bone. There was no saving her heart. It was filled with evil, evil, evil. I think that that's how the church felt about Hillary Clinton. They moved way away from her very quickly with her abortion comments, her human rights issues. Biden has made that worse. I think his comments, the left has made it worse with how they talk about abortion. We've seen what happened in Virginia, New York, other places. I think you're going to see a bigger move for those evangelical. That number's 50, it'll be 70.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I mean, one last point I forgot about, that evangelicals really appreciate, myself included, about Trump, is his very strong support for Israel.
Absolutely. Moving the
Right.
embassy is huge.
Right. Just and we'll be blessed for that.
Yes.
There's no doubt about that. So
Yeah.
I found that very important. But
This was a very controversial topic, so folks might have comments. What do you think?
I didn't find it controversial.
Well, we're men of faith, but
Yeah.
some atheists may think we're crazy. I
I'm
think
just
we're crazy people.
I'm just concerned about the word anointed.
I did too. I think, and again, the biblical use of that word has different meanings and context in different places and times. Old Testament use versus New Testament, and even within each section, they're used differently in different ways.
But I think if we just kind of wrapped up everything that was just said here,
Mhm.
maybe that's what people interpret as being anointed, that President Trump was put into place to bring these good policies, to get a good Supreme Court, that kind of stuff. Maybe that's what they were thinking.
And maybe stop the slope of what they saw of more paganistic type governance. So, anyway, tell us what you think. Give us your thoughts. We'll head into another topic. Hey, we're News Talk with Brandon and Bob. We're here to tell you about some of the facts so you don't have to waste your time watching CNN.
We don't want you wasting any time with CNN.
Or Fox, or MSNBC, or some of these other guys that are making a whole lot of money.
Et cetera, et cetera.
Not paying me. All right, so let's go to Bob questions because we got to do health. I don't want to do COVID, so let's just do something else. And I didn't really know what to come up with, but I saw you. Literally, that's the extent of my notes, folks. It's literally that much. I throw it to Bob. I literally don't know. I read the story in the headline. I was like, huh? So places are going to create, if they haven't already, or I don't understand. Anyway, genetically modified mosquitoes are going to be released. They mentioned Florida and Texas. That's my stomping ground. What kind of mosquitoes are going to be attacking me now, Bob?
They won't. That's the point. They won't be attacking you. That's the whole point.
How do we have genetically modified mosquitoes?
Well, there's a company in Britain called Oxitec, and for about a decade now, they've been working on adding a self-limiting gene into the male mosquitoes in the laboratory. And for the past 5 years or so, they had permission to release them in Brazil, Cayman Islands, Malaysia, some other places. And they saw that the mosquito population dropped dramatically. The Aedes mosquito. This mosquito can carry dengue fever, Zika, chikungunya, yellow fever, some very dangerous diseases.
Malaria?
Right? No.
Okay.
That's Anopheles.
Okay. I'm asking. Some of you guys might ask.
Just in case. And so that was the plan. So they developed these mosquitoes, and then they would release it into the population. What does a male mosquito want when he gets out in the population?
He wants to eat and find a girl mosquito.
He wants a girl mosquito, and they mate. And what happens is the female mosquito will start having offspring. Well, this lethal gene that's inputted will kill all the offspring, about 95% plus of them. So, in theory, it's very effective. Then they've done a more updated version of this mosquito where the offspring will only kill, well, the gene will only kill the female offspring. So the males will continue, and these males can continue generation after generation, go ahead and do that to more female mosquitoes. So it's, in theory, it's very effective. Brazil saw a 96% decrease in Aedes aegypti mosquitoes, which is a big deal since Brazil is overrun with mosquito-borne diseases. So Oxitec has been trying to get this genetically modified mosquito in the Key West area. No, it's Key Haven, I believe it is, in Monroe County for years. And EPA would always keep on saying nay, nay, nay. Well, a month ago they said...
I'm taught him nay, nay, by the way.
Yeah. About a month ago, the EPA said, okay, let's do it. Now, it still has to go through a couple layers of bureaucracy. It has to go through the Florida Keys mosquito control, which is one of the preeminent mosquito controls in the country, just based on their location. And it has to go through the state of Florida also. So there's some debate about whether this should still go on. And a lot of this debate was brought up in a study from last fall from a Yale professor who said that that small percentage of offspring that survive are still carrying around this trans gene, and it can cause a lot. He says, without any data, mind you, without any data, says it could cause a more dangerous hybrid, more able to transmit infectious diseases, more resistant to pesticides.
So it's just a theory or a hypothesis. We have no way of knowing.
It's an assumption, and he was even criticized not only by Oxitec, the company, who blasted him right away, and actually went to the scientific journal and said, hey, we got to do something about, at least put a comment or something. But also there was a bunch of scientists, insect experts.
Like yourself.
Not an insect expert, but yeah.
Worm and germs.
Yeah.
All right.
And a lot of them have come out and said, yeah, he just went way too far. These are all assumptions, and he brought no data to the table. So we'll see where it goes, because of that study, though, that gave more fodder to the environmental groups. But it's, as far as I could see, it's not backed up by anything.
What are some of the negatives about actually doing this? I mean, what negatives have you seen, or you could theorize that actually we think there could be negatives?
Theorize is the unknown, because you're dealing with the environment.
So we are in unknown territory of
Right.
negative consequences.
Right, because remember all this stuff, them creating these transgenic mosquitoes was done in a laboratory, but in Brazil, they've released about 1 billion mosquitoes so far around the world.
1 billion
1 billion
mosquitoes?
mosquitoes between those countries.
How far can a mosquito go?
Not very far.
Okay.
And their lifespan is relatively short.
Well, I don't know if we got mosquitoes that were left in Brazil and they're somewhere else by now. I don't know. If it's
Well,
true.
I mean, the Aedes aegypti mosquito, which is a concern down in the Key West, are the Keys because even the Florida Keys mosquito control people said, and they're totally for this, is the pesticides and insecticides we have, they're resistant to them now.
Great.
We're out of options.
Wonderful.
Yeah. Now, how did that mosquito is not native to this country, so obviously it found its way via airplane or whatever.
Yeah.
So, so there is that unknown, but nobody's really proven anything, in my view. Anything.
Do you think Texas or Florida will win and get it first? Who gets the genetic hybrid mosquito first?
We'll be starting probably this summer. Houston will probably be next year.
All right.
Yeah, we'll see what happens.
Genetically modified mosquitoes coming to the U.S.
And what's interesting is when you hear genetically modified, there's always going to be a resistance, right?
It sounds a little scary.
We
feel like you're watching Jurassic Park or something. Michael Crichton warned us of making crazy creatures in a lab.
Pops on pop culture.
Well, you just don't know. I mean,
there's unknown.
But we've already had a case study, right? We already have Brazil, 1 billion mosquitoes. We didn't release 30. We released 1 billion mosquitoes.
Yeah.
Brazil still exists. They're fine. Things are going on.
And
what positive does a mosquito bring to the environment and the ecosystems? Are they only a parasite?
Well, it's the female that we're concerned about because that's the one that has to suck blood.
Yeah.
In order to fertilize.
But what benefit do they represent in the ecosystem at all? Do you know?
None that I'm aware of. Okay. It's like mosquitoes are essentially the largest killer on the planet.
Right.
If you add up all the numbers. And the male mosquito is harmless.
He's an eater breeder, man.
Yeah.
He's got to eat.
He goes find a little nectar, go find a lady.
Yep.
And that's what he does.
Life as a mosquito. Genetically versions of that guy coming to Florida and Texas soon. All right, news talk. Hope you enjoy, subscribe, like, share, all that stuff. I'm not going to say all the crazy stuff. You know the drill.
Human nature, greed and money being involved and always being a play in political adventures. So it's going to be difficult, but I mean, that is where we are. And right now, you see, these big companies are giving money to both parties. It's such a facade when we hear politicians talk about big business or this corrupt bank or this corrupt company or whatever, because they're doing both sides. Everybody's involved.
I've been on the record stating we need to make it mandatory that all congressional, Senate, and presidential candidates be required to wear NASCAR racing suits.
That'd be fantastic.
So that we can see who owns them. They can have their sponsor things, and we'll know who owns the candidate then, and it makes us a much more educated voter then. When you look at Jimmy Johnson, the major thing you see is Lowe's. So you know that Lowe's is Jimmy's main sponsor. Well, we need to incorporate those NASCAR racing suits into our political candidates.
With someone like Charlie Rangel, do we have to take away his suit and make him wear stripes since he's committed fraud? And I mean, how does that work? Because I'm okay with it if that's the case.
Well, what they can each wear whatever they deem appropriate, but we as voters need to know who own them. We need to know who's paying their freight so that we know how they're going to vote and who. It just amazes me how they've allowed a system of bribery into our elections, and yet if you do bribery in the private sector, you go to jail. Another hypocrisy. We go to jail if you bribe someone, but our entire system's based upon bribery.
Good? All right. No, he's not allowed to say Drew Barrymore. It was Heather O'Rourke. We're not going down that road again. You threw me for such a loop, too, when you said all that.
What do I know, man?
I know. Well, pops on pop culture. We have to have a moment, but I'm going to derail the normal stuff because we could talk about reviews. We'll have to do that another time. Because the pop culture universe of television, movies, even cartoons are being devastated and ravaged by the cancel culture from the left, right? So now, because of protesting and the systemic racism that we're all told exists, Cops has been canceled. don't know if you heard that. 33 seasons.
That's incredible.
Yeah. I think it was today or yesterday. Live PD, which is an A&E cop show, it has also been canceled.
Oh, didn't know
That's
that.
gone. Yeah. Now we've moved on to a new one. It's a cartoon. Just happened today. You ready? There's a cartoon of little animals. I think they're all dogs, hence the name. Paw Patrol. It's a Nickelodeon show.
All right.
Main character is Chase, German Shepherd, cartoon dog. He shows police officers in a positive light. So Paw Patrol, you gotta go. Yeah. And I think the lady said, I did not have my notes printed for this thing. She's like, I don't want to live in the world where my child can watch Paw Patrol. And I'm like, you are an insane person. Why are we allowing? And I said, there's no chance that Nickelodeon will stand up to this because they bent the knee and they like virtue signaled. It's all Paw Patrol.
And this still goes back to my point from earlier on today. It's like they keep on doing this, and they're going to eat themselves with this ridiculous. And the fact that these companies are actually bowing down to this.
I know. By the way, if you're a collector of anything, almost all of these things now become collectibles. So if you have a hard copy of Cops, you have a hard copy of these Paw Patrol, you have a physical copy, that will be a collectible in like 20 years. Just so you know, there'll be some kid who's like, I remember Paw Patrol, let me go buy that disc. It'll be $100 on Amazon, someone will buy it.
Well, it's interesting you mentioned Amazon too. I saw that Gone with the Wind.
Gone with the Wind, we're going to touch on that.
That is the #1 selling DVD on Amazon.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
You know why? Because they banned it. They're going to pull it off HBO Max. Now, HBO Max says they're going to put it back with a comment. Now, here's a little factoid I wanted to make sure you knew. All right.
Love factoids.
I got to make sure I get it right because I am not going to be up to date. Because Hattie McDaniel, I didn't know. She won Best Supporting Actress for an Oscar, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. This is her speech. Academy of Motion Pictures arts and scientists, fellow members of the motion picture industry and honored guests. This is one of the happiest moments of my life, and I want to thank each one of you who had a part in selecting me for one of their awards, for your kindness. It has made me feel very, very humble. I shall always hold it as a beacon for anything that I may be able to do in the future. I sincerely hope I shall always be a credit to my race, to the motion picture industry. My heart is too full to tell you just how I feel, and may I thank you and God bless you. We are now saying this film is so racist and historically inappropriate to show anyone or teach from that we're going to erase Hattie McDaniel's performance, her award, and her speech from a generation.
Well, aren't we seeing that with a lot of historical things? I mean, it's just adding up. It's piling up now.
Can I make your blood pressure? I don't know what it takes to get your blood pressure to rise. So let's keep going. Ready? This is the insanity. It just keeps going. All right.
Okay. Where are we going?
Looney Tunes.
All right.
Looney Tunes. Gun control people said no. HBO Max. Again, HBO. HBO, by the way, does like Game of Thrones and 6 Feet Under and Sopranos, and suddenly they're concerned on Looney Tunes to take out Elmer Fudd's rifle and Yosemite Sam's pistols.
And replace it with a sickle.
Well, that was the one episode.
Okay.
So they're just going to be... At one point, Bugs Bunny crams dynamite in Elmer Fudd's mouth. It literally, to me, and I have not watched the whole episode, I watched a clip, it just looked like Tom and Jerry. Which, I'm not opposed to Tom and Jerry, it's just, that's Tom and Jerry.
Yeah.
It is just, why on earth do we care so much? And what is Elmer Fudd going to do without the shotgun? It makes no sense whatsoever. Go woke or broke?
Yeah. Where are we going? How much farther is it going to go?
All right, it's going to go further.
All
so this is where it becomes insane. So,
that wasn't.
No, this is worse.
Okay.
This is how bad they will get. This I hold in my hand, Johnny Carson. I hold in my hand from a not hermetically sealed envelope on Funko Wagnall's porch.
You got to be a little bit older to understand that.
That's a reference for Bob. The glasses didn't come on, but I'm working at it. All right, so have you ever watched The Flash?
I have.
Okay. There's a guy who can stretch himself like rubber. Not Plastic Man. His name is actually Elongated Man. You know what I'm talking about at all? Okay. There's a guy who can do those things.
Okay, good.
You know what Plastic Man is.
Yeah, the guy with the goggles on that can stretch.
Right. So he doesn't have the goggles, but he can stretch. So
Okay.
Elongated Man is kind of like a more detective office version of Plastic Man. Plastic Man was kind of trapped with the goggles and the suit. He couldn't really get out of them because it was way holding together or something. I don't know.
Okay.
This guy can control stretching. Okay? He's on Flash. He just got fired. The guy that plays this character on The Flash just got fired. His name is...
What was his crime?
Hartley Sawyer. Well, first, before I get to the crime, he says... Well, first off, let me say that he did apologize, but that didn't matter. Okay. In 2012, he wrote that the only thing keeping me from doing mildly racist tweets is the knowledge that Al Sharpton would never stop complaining about me. 2012. I actually kind of laughed out loud a little bit at that one. He tweeted in 2014, and this one's actually kind of a little bit audacious. I'm not really going to read it, but it was kind of like, it involved the word rape, and it was inappropriate, but it was like 2014. He was not hired on The Flash. Okay, make sure I get this straight. 2012 tweet, 2014 tweet. He was hired for Flash in 2017. It wasn't regularly on the show until 2018. So someone went back to Twitter, found something that he did 5 years before he even got the job to say, no, you said this back then, you're no longer eligible. So my question to you is, I want to ask you, because this is actually almost like libertarian type territory. Mm-hmm. Why can't he sue to say wrongful termination? Because that was all public knowledge when he got hired.
Well, nothing could stop him from suing.
I don't know what the right to work laws on in California, but
however, I mean,
no one's going to take up the case. I mean, I'm just saying, by the way, California and the union are not going to help this guy. However,
I mean,
they hired him.
I know. We are in a different time right now, and that stuff doesn't matter anymore. There's people out there, that's their job.
I know.
Is to go through old tweets.
I know.
Going back, who knows?
I don't even know.
I mean, fortunately, I've only published articles on mine. So.
I don't know what I've said. I don't know what I've done. And I don't really care, so they want to turn me in, I don't really care.
Yeah.
I'm not working for these people, so I don't really care what they do.
So I mean, it's
just trolling.
I mean, clearly, some of the stuff he said.
It's not the best stuff. It's ugly and it's kind of gross, but it's not. It's not worth like shutting. And by the way, it dates back 5 or so years before he even had the job.
Right, and who does Flash CW or yeah. CW had no reason to go look at that stuff.
No,
so
they didn't care. Nobody cared for this whole time from 2017 to now. Dude's been on the show. Been on the show as a regular since 2018, so at least 2 seasons. And now suddenly it's an issue.
But we shouldn't act like this is unusual because we've seen this happen time and time.
I know, but it's hard to take.
No, it is. It's the times, and we.
Yosemite Sam now he's lost his puker guns. Yeah, and Gone with the Wind is gone.
We're losing our minds.
It's absolutely pop culture suffering, and I hated derailed my. You jerks derailed my pop culture segment because I had to talk about this nonsense instead of the movie reviews that I did this week. So shame on you. All you people that did this. And I had to talk to the Worm and Germ Guy about it.
Yeah, it's a shame. It's a shame.
Are you going to watch Looney Tunes when they don't have guns? I don't even want to watch it.
I don't even know where to find Looney Tunes anymore.
It's on HBO Max. Okay. I guess it's like another sub-streaming
because you clearly can't find that on Cartoon Network.
There's no chance I would watch it now. There's no chance I would watch it now.
I guess you're going to have to drive up to another Cracker Barrel and hopefully find the video sitting on a shelf like you found with...
Song of the South. Maybe. Actually, I went to go look for Paw Patrol today, and Paw Patrol's price went up.
Yeah.
It already has been jacked up. It was like $5 like 2 minutes ago. I didn't buy it. I'm like, I don't want to watch Paw Patrol. Kids won't watch it. And I'm like, now it's like $20 a season. So
how young kids are you talking about?
4 or 5.
Oh, okay.
It's like a little bunch of dogs running around. It's just a cute little kiddie show.
No, I know. I thought you were talking about like. Your children?
No.
Are they going to watch Paw Patrol?
No. I meant like the grandkids.
Gotcha.
Sorry. When I say kids, I mean grandkids. Gotcha. I don't mean my own kids anymore. Yeah. They're adults now.
Right.
So even the youngest one's an adult now.
I still call my daughter kid.
To her face, I guess.
And her husband.
My wife calls her kid more than I do.
Hey, we're going to the kid's house.
Yeah, I probably do that too.
Yeah,
that happens sometimes. So anyway, news talk. That's pretty much our show this week. I do have a surprise for you I didn't get to, so we'll do that. Save that for next week.
Looking forward to that. As if Elmer Fudd wasn't a big surprise.
This is way bigger than Elmer Fudd. I have that coming up. We have more. We'll talk about review stuff. We'll probably have a more pop culture centric show next week to get me caught up, since we got caught up on mosquitoes and all the GMO attacking mosquitoes that could possibly come to Florida. And the boys are not going to hurt me, but the girls, I don't know what we're going to do. I don't know what's happening to this show anymore.
Well, pop culture it up.
There we go. All right, news talk it is.
See you next time.